Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. Today is Friday, the 11th of November, 2022. These are the stories that we will be discussing in detail in the course of the show. We'll begin with the UPR review that went on yesterday in Geneva under the auspices of the UNHRC, that was supervised by three important countries that took a detailed view of the human rights abuses that are being perpetrated by India in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir region. Now, Pakistan has demanded that India should reverse the illegal steps taken since the 5th of August 2019 in the occupied Jammu and Kashmir region and cease demographic engineering there. The Indian human rights record has also come under huge scrutiny in this review, the UPR review, Universal Periodic Review, 41st edition of which was held in Geneva under the auspices of the UNHRC. This is going to be our very first segment. Our second segment of the day, ladies and gentlemen, concerns Elon Musk's ownership of Twitter that has now apparently descended into deeper chaos as key executives have resigned from the platform. If you remember well, when Elon Musk took power as the new head of Twitter, he also let go of many important employees of Twitter, and now there is a new wave of employees who have quit Twitter. The walkouts, of course, have come after the launch of new features that have been introduced by Tesla SpaceX owner Elon Musk. Of course, Twitter is not the only platform that Elon Musk owns. He has bought Twitter for $44 billion US, and we all know about the blue tick. We all know about the amount that he's asking to charge from the users per month, and this and other things that have irked not only users but also former executives of Twitter that have now resigned. This is going to be our second story, the digital platform of Twitter under chaos. What is going to be the future of Twitter? Then we will be talking about the United States of America, the midterm elections that have gone in the US. A lot of imbalance or the balance that might be tilting in one direction or the other as far as this key race between the Democrats and the Republicans is concerned. What is going to happen? Who will ultimately tighten their grip on the current government? Will it be again the Democrats or will it be the Republicans? Nevertheless, Joe Biden has said that he was ready to work with the Republicans in a previous quote. Let's see what happens now. Finally, we're going to talk about climate scientists that have warned today that harmful CO2 emissions from fossil fuels could rise by 1% more this year, and this could come to an all-time high. Now, we have been highlighting climate change since quite some time, since a number of years in fact. Climate change, the effects it has, the effect it has had on Pakistan through these floods that have hampered Pakistan's economy, Pakistan's humanitarian assistance, and so on and so forth. 33 million people and even counting more than that have been affected by these floods. 1/3 of Pakistan was under water. Now, of course, the water is receding, but the economic future of all of the people who were affected by the floods hangs in tight balance. Therefore, reports such as these cause a lot of questions marks and, of course, a lot of apprehension of what needs to be or what should be or what would be the future as far as climate change and the world is concerned. This is going to be our last story. Let's come to our first segment, and that concerns the Universal Periodic Review, the 41st edition of which was held in Geneva under the auspices of the UNHRC. But yesterday they reviewed the whole story of India in the context of the human rights abuses that have been happening in the Indian Held Valley and elsewhere as well. And of course, it was highly scrutinized during this review that was supervised by three important countries. Pakistan has also highlighted this today. More in the following report.
Narendra Modi-led Hindutva Indian government is aggressively pursuing imperial occupation model in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Kashmiris have been demanding their UN-recognized right to self-determination for over 7 decades, but India is unleashing gory brutalities on the people of occupied Kashmir to suppress their just cause of freedom. Indian human rights record has come under scrutiny during the ongoing fourth cycle of Universal Periodic Review in Human Rights Council in Geneva. UN report for UPR of India mentioned that Office of the Special Representative of Secretary General for Children and Armed Conflict had expressed concern over detention of children by Indian forces in Kashmir. Several international civil society groups had made scathing criticism of India's action in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and its treatment of minorities. At UPR peer review, Pakistan has urged India to accept recommendations made in Kashmir reports of the Office of High Commission for Human Rights and allow the office and the independent observers to visit the occupied valley. Pakistan echoed concerns of international community on Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and asked India to end beyond all human rights violations, release Kashmiri political prisoners, journalists, and human rights defenders. The right to self-determination of Kashmiris should be raised at all forums, and the world must come forward to help them to secure their fundamental rights.
Now, to discuss this in detail, we've been joined by Dr. Raja Kashif Janjua, is an analyst. Dr. Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. Dr. Saab, the Universal Periodic Review, as far as India is concerned, was held yesterday under the auspices of the UNHRC. 3 important countries supervised it, and the Indian human rights abuses were highly scrutinized. Pakistan has also highlighted it today. What do you feel will happen in the light of the observations of this independent rights group under the UPR?
Thank you. First of all, I will have to say 5th August was a very black day for Kashmiris because they changed the Kashmir status. So I think yesterday's events not possible to India to change Indian states status in Kashmir. They are doing all things by force. So how can they agree with
But you know,
United
Dr. Saab, they are doing everything by force. That is just what you have said. But the fact remains that despite all the human rights abuses that have been happening in the Indian Held Valley, nothing concrete has really come out as far as a reaction, a positive reaction in the form of action from the world is concerned. Why is that in your point of view?
I think India will do the same thing. They will not change themselves because they are doing all illegal things. Basic thing is demographic changes in valley. This is the basic thing they are doing. This is.
But Dr. Saab, you know, demographic changes, I understand, are important factor that are hampering the current situation in the Indian Held Valley, but that is not the only thing. There are human rights abuses, there are rapes, there are killings, there are incarcerations, journalists who are jailed, people who are jailed, those who highlight this reality of what is happening in the Indian Held Valley are being muted. Their Facebook accounts, their social media accounts are being muted or are being deleted or are being suppressed one way or the other. How can a country like India that calls itself the biggest democracy in the world function in this manner?
Yes, I think they call themselves biggest world's largest democracy in the world, but in the other picture we see the situation is different, and I think all commissions, United Nations, they are unable to change the situation. They can undo this 370 or other things are very important for Kashmiris.
Do
This
you
is
feel, Dr. Saab, that Article 370 and 35A that you've just mentioned can be restored, because this is what you're talking about, and this is something that has been also highlighted since some time. Do you feel this is a possibility that could happen after this review? Do you feel more changes can happen? Do you feel some kind of action needs to be taken as far as the international body on India is concerned? Do you feel something will happen following this review?
Yes, I think India is under pressure, and they can make change. I think they should do these things. Otherwise, how will survive India in United Nations? How will they face? This is the question. And now we are happy to see this condition. They are facing world now. Before this, they were happy. They were happily doing all things as they wished. Even they were. I was reading to 20 or 2.5 million Indians are getting nationality or national status in especially domicile in Kashmir. And yesterday I was reading on Twitter, Israel is installing 2 agriculture plants or agriculture things, centers they are developing in Kashmir. What is this happening? Can you imagine? They are doing all illegal things. They are changes the forest law. Forest Rights Act is totally demolished. They have changed FRA. FRA is very important for all India, but in Kashmir they are not seeing FRA. They are against FRA. Forest Rights Act. According to Forest Rights Act, they cannot cut forest. but in Kashmir, they are doing all the things. And I think now India has to has to stop all the things. I think this is the voice of time. This is
All
the
right,
time.
this is of course the voice of the time. This is also the voice of the people of the Indian held valley, and this is also the voice of the dozens of human rights organizations across the world that have made detailed reports about the human rights abuses in India, that have also contributed to this Universal Periodic Review that has recently happened in Geneva, including organizations here from Pakistan. But India seems to be not unconcerned with any changes made by under these reviews or under certain directives that have been given under this review. Do you feel India can continue to go on remaining indifferent to international laws and global calls for accountability?
They are still continuing all the things. They never see world is watching them, but United Nations responsibility, especially on these times. But 2 years before 2 years, they did all things. 5 August, the time they changed the things. Where is the world? The question is, do you think they will change their mindset, Indian mindset as a nation, as a state? I think not easy to change them, but they have to change.
Of course, Dr. Janjua, they have to change, because if they don't change, India is going to implode. This is what a lot of organizations are saying, because also Dr. Gregory Stanton, who's the head of Genocide Watch, has said that if the way things are continuing, they continue in the same vein, there's going to be huge genocide of all the Muslims, not only within the Indian held valley, but also within India itself. Now, in a statement by the Foreign Office, Pakistan has urged India to accept the recommendations that have been made by the Kashmir report of the Office of the High Commission for Human Rights and allow the office and independent observers to visit the occupied territory. Do you feel this is a possibility? Because in the past, India has not allowed the independent observers to visit the Indian held valley.
I think again they will not allow, because in human black laws we see they are political leadership behind bars. How will they allow them? If observers will come in Kashmir, in Indian Kashmir, they come and they see the condition will be open. So they will not, India cannot see these things. They will not allow them, but they will have to face the pressure of the United Nations, of the human rights organizations. One day will come, all things will be changed.
When, in your point of view, Dr. Janjua, that day will come? Do you feel that day is near? Do you feel it will take a lot more pressure on India for it to change its tactics towards the people in Indian illegally held Jammu and Kashmir?
I think that day is not near. They are.
All right, Dr. Raja Kashif Janjua was talking to us. There has been some technical issue due to which, of course, this for the moment connection has been terminated, but we will come back to it. Nevertheless, when it comes to Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and the human rights abuses that have been perpetrated by India, we have highlighted it time and again. We've talked to different analysts, different experts, different leaders that represent the Indian held Jammu and Kashmir, and of course the rights of the Kashmiri people. And they are in unison when they say about when they talk about the human rights abuses made by the people and the armed forces on the people of Indian held Kashmir, by the armed forces, by the government of India, and this is going on unabated. There are so many black laws that have been put into place by the Indian government deliberately, laws that date back to the pre-independence, and they are still implemented when constitutionally they cannot be implemented. Also, the fact remains that Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is a region that is still disputed as per the resolutions of United Nations, and that is why India cannot claim the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir to be part of it, because it itself went in 1948 to the UN to have this issue resolved, and since then there have been numerous resolutions in the United Nations as far as this very important issue of Indian illegally Jammu and Kashmir is concerned. Now that the UPI is going to come very soon as far as the assessment of Nepal, Sudan and the Netherlands, let's see what their assessment says, and let's see also how India reacts to it, because the last time in 2017 when this assessment was made, there were 152 recommendations that India did accept, but out of those it barely applied in principle 2 or 3 of those recommendations. So let's see what happens this time. A lot of eyes will be on India. Let's come to our second segment, and that concerns digital rights, digital platforms, especially in the context of Twitter. Now, we all know that Elon Musk acquired Twitter for $44 billion US recently. Now, since then, a lot of people either have been thrown out by Elon Musk or have resigned from Twitter. Also, there are some new laws that have been put into place by Twitter that has angered a lot of users and administration of Twitter alike. What will be the future of Twitter? More in the following report.
A threat of bankruptcy, an exodus of key executives, and a warning from the US regulator for consumer protection marked a chaotic day at Twitter under Elon Musk's new leadership. In an email calling for his first meeting, the billionaire warned employees that Twitter would not survive for long if they didn't find new ways to make money. According to Bloomberg report, Musk told his employees that he could not rule out bankruptcy only 2 weeks after he bought the social media company for $44 billion. Some of Twitter's advertisers, which are main source of revenue, have stayed away from the company since Musk took over, driving down revenue. Meanwhile, features such as $8 subscription for the coveted blue tick, along with a new grey official badge for high-profile accounts, have run into problems. Subscription model led to an increase in fake accounts posing as known figures, which led Musk to scrap the grey badge almost immediately. Twitter is losing $4 million every day, and the social media giant is currently $13 billion in debt, which demands a $1.2 billion interest payment in the next 12 months. After Musk reportedly laid off 50% of the Twitter's 7,000 employees this week, higher-up executives in vital roles have left of their own choice, leaving social media platform in crosshairs.
Now, you know what has happened as soon as Elon Musk has taken ownership of Twitter. He has sent an email for his first meeting and has warned employees that Twitter will not survive for long if they did not find any new ways to make money. We've been joined by Usama Khilji, who's a digital rights expert. Usama, it's a pleasure to have you in our show. Usama, when you look at all that is happening around the digital platform that we all revered so much, Twitter, what do you foresee?
Bilkul, I think there's an issue with how Twitter is being bought by just one person who's in sole control of the entire platform. I think that's a huge issue, and especially because it's something that so many people have worked so hard over. You have people building communities, following, and then all of a sudden you have this person taking control and saying, this is how it's going to be run, and then changing his mind every day. And we're sort of seeing a very public fallout of all of that. So I think it's a strange time to be in, but I think there's also going to be very severe consequences for Elon Musk on what he's doing, and he's soon going to realize that it's not as simple to run such a big platform that's, the harbinger of speech and expression, and also democracy around the world. So I think there's a lot of learnings that he's going to have, including legal challenges and challenges from the Federal Trade Commission in the United States that looks at, how companies are regulated. So I foresee a lot of bad stuff for Musk.
You talked about the Federal Trade Commission. I'd like to quote something that they said. They said, no CEO or company is above the law and companies must follow our consent decrees. Of course, this refers to past commitments by Twitter to obey US privacy laws as well. So is the new management not obeying Twitter laws, US laws under, as per the Twitter is concerned?
Yes, I think first the Federal Trade Commission looks at business practices and makes sure that no company is becoming a monopoly or engaging in monopolistic behavior, which means that you're not becoming a company that has too much power, and clearly under Musk, we're seeing that so many people are being fired. Then the issue of advertising and how that's going to work, and then the biggest issue of verification of accounts. And now we're seeing these hilarious accounts that are pretending to be Elon Musk and pretending to be different companies, and they have a blue check mark and they're tweeting all sorts of stuff, basically to demonstrate to Musk that you can't just sell these check marks to anyone, because that will have severe consequences.
Osama,
So I
this makes me
these
ask you a very pertinent question. Is Twitter becoming more of a saleable commodity rather than a serious social platform where important issues could be discussed with all ease and with all in different details, taking different perspectives? Do you feel that Twitter is going in a totally new direction?
Yes, and that's exactly what it is, right? Because that's what Musk is trying to do. He's trying to say, okay, if you can afford $8 a month, which is around $100 a year, you will get all these privileges. So it's exactly what as you're describing it. It's commodifying speech, right? And saying that, okay, if you pay me this much, then you can get away with this, this, and this. You can have a verified badge. You'll have priority in replies to tweets. So it's really becoming this capitalist place, or at least what he's trying to make it. But I don't think it's going to be very easy for him to implement all of this, because he's gotten rid of all the important people who were making these decisions and ensuring that it remains a safe space for speech. And B, how long is it going to be possible to keep, sort of throwing these tantrums, and based on those tantrums, deciding for what the entire company is going to do. So
I like the word
he
tantrums.
thought,
I like the term tantrums that you use, Usama, because some of it exactly that. Nevertheless, on the one hand, he's commodifying Twitter. On the other hand, he talks about Twitter going towards bankruptcy. He says that he could not rule out bankruptcy only 2 weeks after he has bought the social media platform. Why? I mean, what is happening exactly? On the one hand, he's garnering as much money as possible. On the other hand, he talks about bankruptcy.
yeah, so that's key, right? So let's take a step back and look at what happened. So earlier this year, he decided that he wanted to, buy Twitter. And then he had cold feet. He said, okay, I don't want to buy Twitter anymore. Maybe 44 billion is way too much. But then Twitter said, hold on, you have a legal agreement and requirement to do this, so they had to go to court. And then he reluctantly bought it, right? And now it's sort of like his toy that he's playing with. But then there's a business model. There are advertisers on Twitter that work a certain way, and already some big advertising firms have already started saying that perhaps we should pause advertising on Twitter, and that also obviously impacts like business confidence in the platform, and just generally how much revenue Twitter is able to generate. So that's why he's coming up. And my theory is that the reason he came up with this $8 per month subscription for verification is because he knew that the way he was acting, advertisers will not be happy and his ad revenue will go down. So that's why he's trying to go through a subscriber based model, right? And I think bankruptcy is becoming a big concern. I was just reading today, according to some estimates, Twitter's value has already gone down from $44 billion, which he paid for, down to $8 billion. That's a huge markdown.
That is a huge downfall for Twitter. And the downfall of Twitter is not just as far as its commodity is concerned, its value is concerned, but also in other forms as well. Employees make the bulge of any organization. They form the crux of any organization. Now, when you lay off 50% of employees, that is around 7,000 employees, what do you expect from Twitter? What do you expect from any platform? When there are employees that have worked and toiled their whole lives, and heads of different organizations under Twitter that have been, changing Twitter for the better, and now you just lay them off as easily as possible. How can you expect Twitter to stand back up?
Exactly, and that's the question we're all asking in the global digital rights community, where we're saying, for example, we were in touch with the human rights team at Twitter, and whenever there was some serious issues with content on Twitter in Pakistan, we would contact them directly and say, there's a danger to somebody's life, there's hate speech against them, there's incitement to violence, please help moderate this content. It's called escalation, right? And Twitter usually has partners, trusted partners in every country. But now all of the people that we knew and were in touch with are gone. So even for us, if there could be any like hate campaign online on Twitter in Pakistan today, and civil society organizations like ours, we don't know who to go to or who to approach or where to escalate this. And this is happening the world over. So what it shows is that these companies are too focused on the United States, and even within the United States, the people are getting fired. So what about the rest of the 202 countries in the world where Twitter is being used, where hate speech could be there, where non-English content, so moderating in Pashto, in Urdu, in Sindhi, in Punjabi, in Balochi, in all these languages, who is doing that? Who's making that decision? And who do people go to? That's a really big question. And in the past year, the human rights team at Twitter had made a lot of progress. So if you notice, if you want to report content on Twitter, they've made it very easy now. If you go on any tweet and click report, it goes through a step-by-step process that is very user-friendly. But all of that work now, who's looking at it? That's the big question that also arises.
There are so many question marks, Usama. There are so many question marks that, I even as a user of Twitter, like I'm sure you and all of your colleagues are, we are really thinking of whether to remain with Twitter or to go to any other parallel platform in order to voice our concerns or talk about what we want to talk about. What about the trust of key executives? If you look at the recent list, Yoel Roth, Twitter's head of trust and safety, resigned. Then we've got the Twitter's chief privacy officer, Damian Karen, and chief information security officer, Leah Kistner, who resigned as well. What happened as far as the trust between Elon Musk and these people are concerned?
See, it's very obvious. It's sort of like how Trump became president and what happened with America. People just didn't know what was happening. And it's sort of like that at Twitter right now, where there's this person who just does and says whatever he wants. He says it, and you raise a very good question. What should people do? Should they remain on Twitter? And I think, somebody, a friend of mine tweeted just today, and she said that Twitter belongs to its users, not those who are paying for it. And it's the users who make Twitter. It's the users who've built community on Twitter over the past decades, more than a decade that Twitter has existed. So it's not so easy if you have a big following, if you have all these networks, if you have all these communities that are working together, because Twitter brought them together for them to migrate so easily. So hopefully, let's see what the FTC does in the United States, where Twitter is registered. And then also the market, how the market reacts to this. We talked about advertising, and all of these different factors will have to impact how Musk looks at Twitter next. And I have a feeling that his power will sort of diminish over the next few months, because he will realize that it's not just possible to go ahead with this. But having said that, there are some other social networks that are picking up. So for example, there's one called Mastodian, which a lot of people are starting to use, and it's sort of a decentralized a social media network. And that's sort of technical, but to put it in simple words, on Twitter, there's only just the Twitter company that operates and owns the server and all the data, and that's where it works. In Mastodian, there are multiple servers, and anyone can create a server and store their data on that.
There's a difference as far as these two platforms are concerned.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there will be other platforms coming up, and if Twitter goes into this whole phase of chaos, quote unquote, even Meta or other organizations might think of they're coming up with alternatives to Twitter, which brings me to the very important question, Usama. If you talked about FTC action against Twitter, and that is observing as far as these changes in Twitter is concerned. If you remember, in May last year, in May this year, in fact, Twitter paid $150 million US for violating an agreement with the FTC. So will the FTC prove to be that stringent guard dog as far as Twitter is concerned?
Well, hopefully. So the FTC is headed by a very young lady who is of Pakistani origin, Lina Khan. And
Okay.
her entire thesis when she was doing her law school in the United States was about breaking the monopoly of big tech. And that's what became made her so famous. And that's why that at such a young age, she was appointed the FTC commissioner. And her entire approach towards tech is to ensure that it's not too powerful, that it's under control, and it does not abuse the power that it has gained over time. So I think all eyes are on FTC to see how they manage to, enforce regulations that they've put in place, and how they sort of, deal with Twitter. What we're seeing right now is there's likelihood of huge fines on Twitter, because, as a responsible platform, it is supposed to have, privacy safeguards. It is supposed to have content moderation regimes for it that are effective and teams that are implementing it. And just today in the news, I was reading that at Twitter, there's panic within the staff as well, about how to deal with this. So the remainder of the people that are working there are worried about this. And at the same time, there's all these theories coming up of how the FTC will enforce. So I think the next few weeks will be critical on how the FTC enforces the
That is true,
agreements
and
and the
it also will be
regulations.
critical on how Twitter reimagines itself and how Elon Musk manages to so-called reinvent Twitter and not put it into chaos. Now, in another email to employees, you talked about regulation. Now, let's talk about another email that Elon Musk sent to employees, talking that it was absolute top priority to suspend bots, trolls, spam exploiting the verified accounts. You yourself have mentioned in the very beginning of our discussion about these accounts that have the blue tick. Now, how can a mechanism be evolved before it's way too late for Twitter?
Yeah, so I think it's a good thing that Musk, probably the only good thing he said, is to get rid of bots and fake accounts. And let's talk a bit about what is the disadvantage or threat or risk that these bots and fake accounts pose. When we see topics trending on Twitter, a lot of times PR agencies and even governments around the world are using fake accounts to create perceptions. So you will have a trending topic at the top, on Twitter, and it will have hundreds and thousands of tweets, but most of those would be by fake accounts and bots, trying to, push that hashtag above so that it becomes a national conversation. And a lot of companies and businesses do this too. So I think that poses a risk on how genuine the conversation on social media is. And I think for similar reasons, social media companies started verifying individuals. And why did they verify individuals? So that individuals wouldn't be at risk. If there's a fake account in somebody's name and they're tweeting hate speech and criminal stuff, then they can get in trouble. So what they did was, for activists, for politicians, for organizers, for journalists, they started verifying their accounts so that they don't get in danger and there's no disinformation going around on the internet on when people assume that this person of importance is tweeting when it's not their real account. So that's the entire idea of having verification. But I think now, if anyone can buy it, then disinformation can really go viral. So for example, today there was a fake account of Nestle, and the tweet was, "We steal your water, tap it, and sell it." And it was a Nestle account that's verified, right? So clearly, someone just created that account, bought a verification, check mark, and started tweeting, and people started thinking it's the actual Nestle account doing that. And I think this
So,
just demonstrates.
Usama, it's a very interesting, point that you're making right here. And I've used a word twice during our discussion, that is chaos. Do you feel this whole discussion that we are talking about a social media platform that we all have been using, have been discussing, have been relying on for verified information from organizations, from people who have the blue tick, because that certifies that they are of certain authenticity. But now that this is for sale and we don't know who is real and who isn't, is that putting Twitter into a sort of a chaos-like situation? And with the world already in a geostrategic or geopolitical situation that is more or less chaotic, do you feel it is going to add to it?
It certainly has the potential to do that. Although right now it's sort of like a big joke on Twitter, right? Because everyone's making these funny accounts and cracking jokes just to show the danger of it. But like you said, if this policy continues, then we can see a lot of issues arising. There could be, verified accounts of world leaders, of presidents and prime ministers that are tweeting stuff from verified accounts, and people are believing it and they're relying on it and maybe even making political decisions based on it. So I think real world risks and harms are there and are threatened by this, right? So at the same time, I think that's important that, Omar, you're doing this show so that your viewers can understand and know about this, and more people can understand and know that whatever they see on the internet can not always be reliable, and especially on Twitter now, that risk has really increased, right? But hopefully we will see that some sort of controls will come in place, because just one person cannot just control that. And the reason we're not seeing too much chaos right now is because of the work that employees at Twitter have put in the past, a decade and a half. So of course, it's not so easy to dismantle the systems that they did put in place. And that's why things are moving in somewhat the same way they were before. But like you said, I think that can go bad anytime if the policies of, Elon Musk sort of continue the way they have started to in the past week.
Usama, Elon Musk bought Twitter for $44 billion US. We all know that. We all know the deliberations that went on before he bought it. But if he did not have the money, if he did not have the resources, why buy it? Because I was going through one of his course, and he said, you may have noticed I have sold a bunch of Tesla stock. The reason I did it is to save Twitter. Now, the fact remains that he's also owner of Tesla, he's also owner of SpaceX. Do you feel these two organizations will be compromised or at the expense of Twitter if this goes on?
Yes, a lot of analysts are saying that globally, because what we're seeing is that Tesla stock is also getting affected, because it shows investors are losing confidence in a company, because they're seeing that, okay, if this person who owns this company is acting in such an erratic or chaotic way, it puts it under question the reliability and stability of his other businesses. And although he's the richest person in the world right now, I think it's just showing the world that so much wealth has clearly gotten to his head and he doesn't know what to do with it. So hence the other companies could also get impacted, right? Because the market works on speculation and the market works also on reputation. And if these two things are not going in Elon Musk's favor, then his other businesses could get affected, and soon and hopefully he won't anymore be the richest person in the world who thinks he can, pick up anything that's global, buy it and ruin it.
That is so true, Usama, and it's a time of great concern, not only politically or geostrategically, but also on the digital world. There are a lot of concerns, especially if Twitter is a prime example, there could be others that could follow suit, and it's this mismanagement that could cause a huge concern for the world, developing and developed included, because the misuse of such platforms can lead to extreme dangers to countries, to communities, to nations, to races. And I hope that Elon Musk and his team are trying to do the needful in order to thwart all such misperceptions that could be created and that have been created, because this is a very dangerous time that we live in, Usama, and you know that very well, and we cannot add to that danger, especially in the digital world. Thank you so very much, Usama Khilji, digital rights expert, who have joined us to have talked to us about the Twitter and the way it is going and what needs to be done in order to control it before it's way too late. Thank you so very much. It was a very interesting discussion, Usama. Let's come to our last two segments, ladies and gentlemen. The first concerns the United States elections that are happening in the United States of America. Now, US President Joe Biden has expressed relief after the Democrats have fended off major Republican gains. As far as the midterm elections are concerned, Republicans are inching towards control of the House of Representatives. But Mr. Biden notes that a giant red wave did not materialize. That was a huge concern as far as the Democrats were concerned. Nevertheless, either party could still win the Senate, which hinges on three races that are either too close to call. Mr. Biden has said, nevertheless, that he plans to run for re-election in 2024. His intention is to run again, and that has been our intention, he said, quote unquote. Republicans are closing in on the 218 seats that they need to wrest control of the House as far as from the Democrats is concerned. Whichever party now wins the two of the three outstanding contests in Arizona, Georgia and Nevada is ultimately going to control the Senate. And this, of course, is a huge question mark also as far as the future of US politics is concerned. We all know that always, there's a seesaw between the Democrats and the Republicans. But let's see what the midterm elections prove to be, because, of course, it's the people's sway, it's what the people decide, what the people want to have in power in the United States of America. There are some questions, there are some concerns. Let's see how things materialize after the midterm elections and whether it will benefit the people of the United States of America. Finally, we are going to, of course, go to COP27, climate change, and the number of delegates with links to fossil fuels at this UN climate summit that has jumped 25% from the last summit. Now, campaign group Global Witness has found more than 600 people who were at the talks in Egypt that are related to fossil fuels. That's, of course, more than the combined delegations from the 10 most climate impacted countries. This is also a huge concern. We have been highlighting climate change and how it impacts countries from the developed and from the developing world. Although the developed world can cope with such disasters, developing countries cannot, such as Pakistan. We've seen the floods, we've seen how they have impacted Pakistan, and we've seen how it's not easy for a country like Pakistan to handle the after effects of these floods. So we need to be extremely vigilant, and COP27 is one of the most important forum as far as all of these countries together fighting for a collective cause, and that is to fight climate change. Let's hope that changes and translates into some kind of a reality, because as far as COP26 is concerned, we didn't see much of those pledges translating into action. So COP27, all eyes are on it. And of course, this report that talks about 600 people at the talks that are linked to fossil fuels and 25% increase of those countries who are using fossil fuels, the increase in the number of candidates. This is a huge concern as well. Let's hope that the world understands, let's hope the world listens, and let's hope the world makes a change for the better. With that, we come to an end of this Friday edition of NEWSROOM. We'll see you inshallah on Monday. It's the weekend. Have a great one. Nevertheless, as I always end my show, we are in the midst of a crisis because of the floods. For all those 33 million plus people who are impacted by the floods, help them in whichever capacity you can, through a text, through a shelter, or through any donation that you can.